Welcome to Frederica Street Railway. My name is Paul. In this video I want to show you how I make a more complicated baseboard with the track on different levels. This section of track, or this board rather, will cover the main line up from the Northern Railway or the Northern London Line bridge up to the entrance to the Copenhagen Tunnel. I've taken the PDF file from the main drawing and printed it on a number of sheets of paper. Then I can stick this down onto the top baseboard and then cut around the joining shape here with a jigsaw. I've now cut two pieces here to support the track bed. They are obviously at different heights to get the correct gradient, which is about 1 in 40. So I just need to stick these on first with some old glue. And tack them. So with the end height supports in place, I can now fix the track bed plywood. Again, a little more glue. On the top there. Make sure it's square onto the edge. Tack it into place again. Well, we can all change our minds. Since starting the construction, I've discovered the DCC Concepts power base, which are basically very thin steel plates you lay under the track and some powerful magnets under the loco to actually increase the adhesion. Now, I've always had a problem with this incline here, because even in real life it was extremely steep, and the operating instructions for the railway specified that no more than 10 trucks, coal trucks or plywood wagons could be pushed up the incline at any one time, and the accent was on the word push because the locomotive always had to be at the south end. So using the DCC power base, I hope, means I can actually increase the gradient here from a 1 in 40 to about a 1 in 30, which means it's a bit more like the real prototype and makes it easier to construct some of the other boards. I also found that leaving the incline to dry in the garage, the plywood warped a little. So I've now decided that instead of just having the vertical supports, I'm putting a piece on the back here which will give me the precise gradient and allow me to pin it down much more securely. Now that the incline is in place, I can now turn to the other structures. The most significant, of course, is the entrance here, the wall, the tunnel, portal for the Copenhagen Tunnel with its towers around the corners here. There are also retaining walls, embankments here, a small wall there, and then the embankment wall, retaining wall along this section there. This is the main track here for the 4 main lines. This is the goods section here. This track is going to rise up. In fact, about 1.5 centimetres by the time we get to the end here. So in order to do that, I first need to cut out part of the ply so I can bend it up to create the gradient. And now we're going to make 2 cuts along here so we can prise up the plywood to make the gradient. I'm using this multi-tool with an oscillating blade at the end which sort of cuts through the plywood like butter. And there's a mask, simply not because of the COVID, but because of the dust. So I've now set the top block here to the additional height. This is for about a 1 in 40 gradient here, it's not so steep. And then just go along and add in additional packing blocks. The plywood itself will actually form a nice curve with a smooth transition in the vertical direction at the bottom here. So we just tack this one. Well, I've now cut out the other structural components for this section of the track. There's the two pieces of expanded polystyrene, one for the main track and one for the section of the incline. There's a retaining wall here dividing the incline track from the main one. This is 5mm hardboard. I had to work out the spacing or the thickness of this and the size from looking at some of the photographs and counting the bricks to get the right height. And then we have the retaining wall for the embankment leading up to the incline here. This is cut along the bottom here at a 6-degree angle so that the wall itself slopes back 1 in 10 from which I found from an old Pico diagram on the internet. First, the embankment wall is coated in PVA along the bottom and then stuck down, supported by these weights. Then I'm going to take the first section of track bed for the incline and coat it liberally in PVA glue, sorry, in American glue, yes, this famous mix here in Italy. So that's the track bed for the incline, lined up, pressed against the embankment. So I'll press it up against the wall here. Wipe off the excess glue. So it's a day later and all the glue has dried on the foam and I've glued down the top foam on the incline. I can now start to put the landscape structures. The most significant one, of course, is the entrance to the Copenhagen Tunnel with its 3 arches and the central 3 turrets here. This is machined out of a piece of MDF with the appropriate wall thickness at the top and all the arches from the scale drawing. I'll now just use a set square to make sure that it's vertical and wedged while the glue dries. Another distinguishing feature of this part of the track is the embankment here to the east that comes up to the goods yard. This had a wall along here with inset arches and angled top. Again, this is machined out of a piece of MDF with all the arches cut out as well. So we're just going to stick this along the base here, a bit more glue. To go in to attach the tunnel mouth. I made the embankment in 2 sections because there's a change in direction midway along here. I think once we get a bit further along, there's a signal gantry goes across. The hillsides of the embankments are made in the same way with layers of polystyrene foam glued to each other. Once the foam is set, or the glue is set, I can then use a hot wire tool to start shaping the foam into the shape of the hillside. Well, this is definitely one of those jobs that is probably easier when you're watching a YouTube video than trying to do it in real life, because the cutter sort of goes all over the place and doesn't necessarily cut very smoothly. However, it's good enough, and I'm going to finish it off roughly with a coarse file, and then of course it's going to be covered in a sort of plaster material in the end for the scenic scatter. Well, it's a few more weeks down the line, Well, all the main structures are now in place. The tunnel, archway, the banks on either side and the tracks. The next job will be to do the final finishing, but I'm not going to do any of that until I assemble all the baseboards together so that I can create the scenery to flow from one to the other. So that's one main baseboard finished, and in the next episode I will have a look at how I start to lay the track.